Mike and I had a practice Zoom the other day, and he stood me up because he was busy looking at ice formations, which I thought just speaks volumes about Mike. He is flipping brilliant. He's out there busy working out how you can super chain glues together. Super glue chains together rather, as well as working out how we can overcome the climate crisis and how we can use our bikes to have fun in the process. So without further ado, I think we've kind of plateaued at how many people we've got here. Mike, if you are good to go, well, I'll hand over to Mike, and if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A, and I will pop my video off so that you've got Mike filling up your screen, and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you see my slides? I fortunately have a live studio audience here, so I can test these things on. So yeah, any cheering, jeering, etc. is probably from them. Before we actually get into this chat, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday. You've probably gone from one Zoom to this Zoom, so I want you all to get up and do some sort of movement in whatever way you want. Yes. Shake out your hands, do a little dance, do a little twirl, maybe Mexican wave, starting on this side. Beautiful. Well done, everyone. Woo. Okay. Now, I mean, it is on, we're online here, so you can do whatever you want whilst you watch this. You might want to stretch, you might want to lie down. There will be pictures. Quite an alarming amount of pictures I've put together, I think. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, as Libby said, I'm Mike. I am 29 years old and 52 months. And the way things are going on the planet that I live on, it's called Earth. I don't know if you've heard of it. Basically, my retirement looks like a scene from Mad Max, hopefully with less Mel Gibson, but bleak nonetheless. Now, due to this, when you're on a sort of dangerous path as we currently are, the best thing to do is to think about how you might change that path. I was thinking about this as I clicked to actually move slides forward. January last year, up in the mountains of Croatia, here was where the path started to deteriorate. And from there, it really only went downhill, and not in the good way, which you can maybe relate to as cyclists. It turned into what you might call cyclimbing terrain. Now, cyclimbing, which I'm very much not campaigning to be an Olympic sport, involves getting a bike full with really heavy stuff, picking it up in your shoulder, and just stumbling over rough terrain. The rougher the better, really. If there's kind of bouldering style moves involved, that's always a bonus. And if you break your ankle or pretty much any bone, that's instant disqualification. Anyway, so I was doing this, trying to get to a point up in the mountains. And after, an hour or maybe 2 hours where I'd made about 500 meters of progress, I decided that this was a crazy thing to do and I should stop and I should try a different approach. So I put down my bike, stashed it for a few days and went up this point. Now, that was kind of, using understanding of the situation I was in to change tactic and change the approach. Whereas currently, as a kind of a globe, we are still very much bike on shoulder, full steam ahead over the rocky ground as the sun is starting to set and we are stumbling into darkness. But we can, like the wise man that I am, put down the bike and carry on in a different route. Because the only really, the way out of the kind of doom and gloom of the climate crisis that we are leading ourselves into is to take a different approach. And for a different approach to work, we are going to need some new stories. Now, what follows is my talk about the New Story Ride, which is based on this need for different stories, a crazy idea from my partner Rosie, and where are my notes? Oh no, I've done it. I remember what happened now. one moment, please talk amongst yourselves. And just go back to that. And we'll just do kind of Russian roulette as to what the next slide is going to be. So stories need characters. This is me. This was the 24th of November 2019 on a chilly, blustery day in Vienna, where I set off on the new story ride. My very lightly laden bike, as you can see, a loaner from Rosie's dad, Graham. The bike itself is actually older than my partner Rosie. It's from 1993. He bought it secondhand, and when he bought it in the shop, they had said, "Oh, you'll be back. Everyone who buys a secondhand bike, they're back within a year to get a new one." Yeah, so that was 1993, and it's still going strong, as much as I've been trying my darndest to destroy it by dragging it over rocks and the like. I set off from Austria to cycle to Mongolia, which is some distance away, but my partner Rosie, who we'll come on to later, she is trying to do that not on a bike but on foot, because she's I'll probably leave you to finish that sentence. So the whole purpose of this ride is to show that the kind of the doom and the gloom that we have been told of where we're going, and that, you know, the future is dark, is just one story, and that if we come together and we work collectively and collaboratively, we can tell another story. But beyond that, that people are already out there doing that in their droves, and everywhere from Western Europe, where people tell all the stories about already, all the way through the Balkans and off into Central Asia, and like everywhere you go, there's people who care, and there's people who are motivated, and there's people who are trying their darndest. So this is Rosie, as I was saying. Every story needs characters, and she is quite a character. I'm presenting this from not Mongolia or anywhere on the route, unfortunately, but from the quite nice Lake District. Because, spoiler alert, so far I've not managed to get to Mongolia, and there's this thing called COVID. I don't know if you've heard of it. So Rosie had set off in August of 2019 to, yes, that's right, run to Mongolia, because she was wanting to combine the two things that she really, or two of the things she really cares about. I mean, I wasn't included in this plan, so I mean, surely I come on that list somewhere. Anyway, it's beside the point. She wanted to do running up spiky things, because, you know, going back to that thing of being in the Lake District where she grew up, and really trying to make an impact on the climate crisis by, yes, telling these stories of new ways of living and new ways of organizing, and that there are just so many more positive stories out there than people think of day to day. So basically, I was like, great, good idea. And 4 months later, after a quick train jaunt to China, which makes me sound way more worldly than I deserve to sound, I started the New Story Ride. I started in Vienna because I was trying to coincide with Rosie during her run, as she would be in Austria by that time. That's right, she had run from the UK to Austria in just under 4 months, which, I mean, I've never run more than about 15 kilometers. So I don't know how it works really, but she made it somehow. Anyway, where we are now, Austria. I arrived in Vienna on a Friday, and the kind of Greta Thunberg shaped bat symbol said that there was a Fridays for Future march on. And I went there to find it, and met this chap, Jonas. He's standing there proudly with his absolutely amazing bike, which I cannot stop talking about. But with the purpose of the New Story Ride being to talk about how people are kind of using what they love, what really motivates them to create change, on meeting Jonas, I was like, maybe I can just write about him and pack the whole thing in, because I'm not sure I'm going to find a story that more neatly encapsulates this kind of thing. So he was a international globe-trotting, flying all the time kind of musician. And then he had children and he started to think, you know, the future is something that possibly has some bearing on me and my kids. Maybe I should start trying to do things about that. So he started small with eating less meat and giving up his car, but he was still flying all over the world because that was his job. And so then he had this idea for a while, somewhere in the back of his head, that he wanted to make a bike that could bring music and performance to other places. And that's how this thing, the Velo concerts, came about. And it's so sort of, it's like a transformer, if you know what transformers are like, except it's a bike, obviously. And it turns into like this music stage, which can go anywhere. And the battery for this electric bike powers the speakers and powers the microphone and all the other technical things that go into making music that I don't know the names of. And it can kind of bring performance to new places. Like he took it, basically told me, took it mountain biking, and they did a whole tour across Austria with all the musicians traveling alongside on bikes. And it not only does that, I mean, it kind of creates new opportunities for how you can do performance and bring creativity to different places, and in a very low carbon way. So obviously, you know, and it's beautifully made, beautifully kind of designed, whereas some projects that are kind of quote unquote sustainable are so based on functional concerns that they don't become appealing in any way whatsoever. Whereas this one just seemed to hit all these different notes so well. However, I did end up going on the ride because as much as technology and these sorts of cool innovations are going to be part of it, there's also going to be very much more. This was one of the performances on that day. This amazing young woman who got the whole crowd singing and clapping along. Some wry Austrian humor, which for some reason is in English, but well, who knows why. Anyway, all around Vienna, there was all sorts of bits and pieces of examples of how things are changing to become more environmentally friendly, like this vegan doner and the Architects for Future and the like. I also met this guy up in the top top right, who's the mayor for, or the candidate for the local city centre region, who had just opened this road which used to be full of cars and now was just full of people on bikes and you know, pop-up market. This guy Simon in the middle, I got to pose for this awfully cheesy photograph with his lentils. He had created this project called Dal Cycle, which was, I mean, starting off just as sourcing locally grown organic lentils, trying to work direct with farmers to get them at a decent price so he could sell nutritious dal good price to people. Or, I mean, he was doing it pay as you feel when I had met him. And through that, he wanted to start the whole conversation and a whole change in the food system in Austria, which my friend who I was staying with there, he explained that when him and his band go and travel around Austria and someone says they're vegetarian, people are like, come on, there's only a little bit of chicken in this, just eat it. So, you know, a really big kind of opportunity for things to change. But he was really thinking of it in a way that is very holistic and not just working on using up the scraps of a system that is full of waste, but really starting from the ground up and making a system that is good for people and good for the rest of nature. So I eventually left Vienna and set off and crossed the Iron Curtain. Obviously, usually that used to be a bit of a trickier trip than it is nowadays, and to me, that told a story that, you know, things do change much in much bigger and more dramatic ways than we expect. In what any system that you have now can and, you know, can and will change, and it can happen much quicker than anyone would expect. In Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia, I came across a Bratislavagan, there we go, pun, I did warn you, revolution that was starting from the very same building that the Velvet Revolution that had helped to, that had been a kind of part of the movement to liberate Slovakia, had started from. This plate of food was probably the only time I've ever eaten 2 lunches basically back to back, but it was an incredible plate of like stewed vegan duck style things with delicious cabbage and no, I mean it, like I know that cabbage gets a bit of a bad rap, but that was very good, and dumplings, and all around the city you could see evidence of this. And the guy whose name has just completely gone out of my head told me how he used to be a music producer or a music promoter and has gone into being a vegan promoter and runs really successful vegan days in local, what are they called? In a local castle. This was a quick sightseeing tour of Bratislava, and from there on, it was right at the start of the trip. I have been speaking far too much at the beginning, so I'm going to start trying to move on a little bit quicker. But anyway, obviously I hope to start slow, get some training, get some fitness, and ended up with 2 days of doing 130 kilometers, getting absolutely knackered, my phone dying, me looking like this, and trying to sleep in what I thought was a nicely thought out bothy tent, but in fact was an Austrian army tent. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, they kind of asked me very politely to leave. So I ended up sleeping in this half shed. From there, I met another one of Austria's fine service people, the motorway police, the roads symbols in Austria and the UK, I mean, as far as I know, road symbols, they are different. And so I ended up on the on-ramp of the motorway, a little bit, a little bit confused as to what I should do next. Fortunately, the motorway police turned up and they got these chaps in a van to take me back to somewhere I could actually cycle from. We ended up great pals. I think one of them might even follow the trip now on Facebook. But they definitely warned me not to do it again, which I definitely reassured them that I really had no intention of doing. From there, I went to Graz in the middle of Austria, and these 2 amazingly friendly Albanian guys who run the bike shop there, who've helped me with a few things. I mean, this was them. They could not stop laughing and smiling. And I mean, especially when I told them my plans of trying to cycle to Mongolia, that only helped. I was in Graz to meet the team behind an amazing conference that started off as they were trying to make a small meeting about how they make Graz a better town for people. And then it exploded basically into what is now the biggest conference, I think, for people who work on, as they call them, city changers from all over the world, who come together now every year in different places and discuss and come up with different ways of making their cities better for people. And then I carried on down into the south of Austria, where I met up with Rosie once more, and we did this. From there, give me a moment to soak in the sort of majestic beauty of this. This is the Torrente Cornapo, where my heart will forever reside, looking longingly into the crystal clear waters and the stings of the thorns that cut me as I tried to get down to swim in it will live with me forever, like the kisses from a lover that scorned me.
What?
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I got a little bit carried away. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so this was Lorenzo, who the first person who I'd ever stayed with through warm showers. He made this incredible bespoke bottle cage for me using old inner tubes to house my oversized bottles. I think they're absolutely genius. I've tried to make one myself and so far failed, but the one that he made has lasted me the whole trip so far. From there, I crossed into Slovenia, and it was obviously night by the time I got there. And this incredible woman, Urshka, if I'm not completely butchering the pronunciation, her and her partner, I ended up knocking on their door asking if there was a chance I could sleep in their garden, because the kind of space between towns and houses wasn't so much to find a good camping spot. And her partner kind of looked at me a bit confused and was like, yeah, but don't you want to sleep inside? And I could smell the kind of smell of like a fire and everything from inside. And so, yeah, I obviously said yes. And that was the first time I had knocked on someone's door and asked if I could camp in their garden, and ended up sleeping inside their house. And then she cooked me this amazing breakfast, sorry. And we left with such a kind of warm feeling that I ended up writing a poem about our experience, and I am not going to read that out now. As much as I've become the guy who writes a poem and then puts it on my blog, I'm still not quite the guy who's going to then force you to hear it, but you can read it. I'm still that much of that kind of guy. From there, I carried on through to Ljubljana, or Lovely Ljubljana, as Rosie here calls it, basically to experience the transformation that's been going on there, especially in the city centre, to turn it from a kind of car-dominated place into this incredible, people-friendly, calm, peaceful, but kind of still lively place where the whole centre has been almost completely made completely car-free. Cyclists are allowed, but kind of encouraged to go quite kind of slowly. You can get a little bit of a sense from the pictures of the kind of the before and the after of the spaces that they've transformed. And from there, I carried on to Croatia. This was an amazing valley that I went down. The morning before this photo, I was sleeping in the woods and woke up to the sound, or was just about to go to sleep, and suddenly there was the sound of this car coming into the woods near to my camp spot, and I thought, all right, I'll just sit here still, no one will notice me. And then all of a sudden there was all these loud bangs, and I was like, oh my God, they're shooting someone. I was expecting that would be, or I thought even worse, they had seen me and they were shooting at me. So I lay there, tried to lay there completely still, and was, heart racing and full of adrenaline, until I realized it was fireworks. And then they got back in their car and drove off, and everything was fine, and the night passed without incident. Yes, this was on the way into or out of Zagreb, I forget which. In Croatia, came across this is the kind of the center hub for eco green building, passive house kind of things, where I was for one evening adopted for their Christmas party. Came out of the rain. I managed to time my cycling the 2 days where I had the heaviest rain, right for when the heaviest rain was, and then managed to stop when the rain stopped. So this was a great opportunity to dry out just a little bit and meet some of the cool people who have been at it for years, trying to make more efficient, more cozy, more people-friendly houses. And they're also working on making like creating seed banks to help preserve classic varieties of varieties of seeds, so that if the diseases come, there are potentially alternatives to the plants that have been affected. And then to Christmas, Rosie and I were taken in by this amazing family, and the woman front and center there with the blue glasses, I will always forget, I will always remember the way that she, in telling kind of with, some English, but not a lot of English, about the exploits of her, was it her granddad? Or I think it was her granddad, he was a very forward-thinking guy. He had a motorbike, he had like a toothbrush. I mean, that was big stuff from back in the day. But one of and a leather jacket. He was like basically the Fonz, I think, of the day. But one of the few words that from that story that she recounted in English was, and she sort of turned to us slightly and was like, "Sexual," which was a description of his exploits, and it will stay with me forever. But this was actually Christmas Day, and they took us in, and it was a Christian, Catholic, Muslim, and possibly Jewish as well. Many different celebrations all at once. So there was all the different types of Christmas food, and it was an amazing kind of melting pot, and people came and went, and didn't matter at all that Rosie and I were there as sorts of flies on the wall. But it was gorgeous. Now I have this slide in here because I talk about where we are on the coast, and that was where I was doing the side climbing. And then there was this bit at the top of the kind of this mountain. I mean, this is like more than 1,000 meters, I think, and it's early January. Really, there should be like at least a meter of snow there, and there was basically not a scrap of snow on any of the mountains around us. It was this kind of feeling of, it's nice, but it's bad. And I know that snow isn't everything, but as the song that we all know goes, the snow is connected to the water is connected to the plants are connected to the food's connected to the belly. And I'm not going to sing the whole thing, you guys know it. But anyway, the point is that this ride isn't about telling you about the dire consequences of climate change and the climate crisis. This is about telling you about that there is much to look forward to, there's much to be hopeful for, there are people doing good things, and yes, that there is reasons to be optimistic. Cycling along the coast, I ended up doing a bit of a new story ferry ride and visiting a whole bunch of islands, 3 of which were completely car free. This is the Zlaren, one of those islands, which is these car free islands. They just have these funny little tractors to move around construction materials, and then little buggies like that woman was riding, and little hand carts to take things from shops. And each of those islands is so beautifully peaceful. Like it just made me so kind of happy. And that was in the winter, so they were extremely quiet. There was, I think most of them had between 200 and 300 people living on them. And then, but in the summer they swell, and one of them called Silba that was on has up to like 5,000 people, all kind of living without cars and just relying on the ferry that brings the goods and the people. And the guy I stayed with there, he told me how his elderly mother, who normally lives inland in Croatia, she comes there in the summer or some chunk of the year, and how she's so much more sociable and active when she's in this place, because there's this story that people that everyone needs a car in order to get around, especially old people. Whereas, you know, when things are compact and the things that you need are within easy reach, such as your friends, exercise, food, then the need for a car just disappears, and it actually makes a place more open for more people. Zlaren, that island, was also had also caught media attention by trying to go single-use plastic free. This, I thought, was a beautiful way of dealing with the with stickers. Who needs a sticker when you can just write things on straight on the banana? Genius. Also on Zlaren, I met Luca. He kind of approached me tentatively and was like, excuse me, like, what are you doing? As I was wandering around with my bike, looking kind of blissfully around the island. And he moved from Zagreb, the capital, to live on the island, and he's taken up a whole bunch of goats. And here he is sitting on the one road on the island that had been built because there was going to be an incinerator on the island, which locals managed to oppose, and now this road is just slowly being reclaimed by the wilderness, and he walks his goats on it, and the incinerator has never been used. So it was a nice story, I felt. This is with a bunch of bad-mouthed lads who were creating what do you call it, a permaculture garden. The trees that they are standing between, I made them pose for this awfully awkward photo, are the first two trees to have been planted in something like 50 years in that area. The guy second from the left, Luca, he owns the area, and his family has kind of been in the area for generations, and so he's excited to kind of come there and regenerate it and make something with that piece of land that he's bought, and has beautiful plans. And what I liked about that story was that the rest of the time he spends working on ships. And I mean, when I say foul-mouthed, I would be loath to repeat some of the jokes and banter that went on amongst us as we dug holes to plant trees, to make, grow peaches, and to make a kind of beautiful ecosystem that would be kind of regenerative and nurturing the ground as well as nurturing people. It was an amazing juxtaposition. Then nipped back to Split on the mainland, where I met up with Rosie for this one photo, and then we left basically. I went on to finish off the new story ferry ride onto the island of what's the island called? It is gone. The most remote set of islands in Croatia, where I met these fine fellas. These are the goats and a pig of, on the left here, Jelko and Natasha, who had moved from their jobs in telecommunications to this island to create a kind of self-sustaining off-grid place. And they had goats and were slowly building it. And then on the right, there's Helena and his name. I cannot remember his name. I've just taken a note of it. But they are a fishing couple, and he used to have to go out every day, no matter the weather, early in the morning until late at night, and then repair his nets and go again, and really be hammering the fish stocks there. And then recently this island has become a protected park, and so he has been innovating into how he can make a living by fishing for his needs, and not having to just fish and fish and fish to make ends meet. And so he's been working in creating a tourist boat that takes people out, and he does fishing with them. So he shows them how he fishes. They get to kind of learn more about what's in the sea, and through that he makes enough money generally for not having to fish all the time. And his wife now runs a WhatsApp group that he can sell some of the extra fish that he does catch directly to people on the island, because there's a strange thing on the island where people, unless people fish themselves, it's really hard for them to get fresh fish because of the way the crazy capitalism works. And so this has been a good way of, and a kind of a model that other fishermen on the island are looking at as to how they can work less but be better for the fish and better for themselves. And he kind of said how happy he was that nowadays he can have tea in the morning with his wife. He never had time. He was always out on the boat at 5 or 6 a.m. And so how it's helped his lifestyle. This was the sunset from that island, the name that just still keeps not being in my mind. And then it was off to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Fun facts about Bosnia and Herzegovina: one of the most divided countries in Europe, if not the world, and also the most landmined country. I said fun. Yes, no, but an absolutely amazing place that I was so lucky to go to. However, it was certainly waiting for me. So throughout the whole trip up until that point, I had zero problems. And then the night I was arriving in Bosnia and Herzegovina, my chain snapped. I obviously did my best to super glue it back together and then carry on cycling. And then had a flat tire, which the pump that I had with me, it turns out, wasn't really powerful enough to pump up the tire to the pressure it needed to be. That was the first flat for the whole trip to that point, so that was fortunate. And I ended up having to kind of kick push when the chain finally did give out. I made it about 12 kilometers, let's say, with a couple of re-glues, and eventually made it to Mostar, where I met up with my friend Ivana and her partner, and she is Serbian and he is Muslim, and the country remains divided from the war in the 90s between kind of Serbian populations and Muslim populations and Croat populations, at least in politics. And Mostar is the most kind of divided city in this most divided country. I don't know why this picture is there. And yeah, up in the mountains beyond, there was these landmine signs on each side of the path, which really kind of struck home as to what this, the fostering of and the kind of ongoing hatred that is, trying to be used for political gain, what it means. But an amazing, beautiful place that I would urge anyone to go and visit and to learn more about, and to find these puppies because they are absolutely adorable. From Mostar, I took the route up to Sarajevo and went across this Indiana Jones bridge, which was just about at the limit of my kind of trust in rickety bridges. I had walked across it and back just to check before actually pushing my bike across, because that river down below is the Neretva, which flows into Mostar and is quite literally the coldest river in the world. I did go in and swim in it in Mostar, which isn't the coldest part of the coldest river, but up in these reaches, I think it must be pretty much there. It's cold. So I had very little interest in falling into it. As much as I like swimming in cold water, I just didn't want to get Billy wet. So from there, this was a rather unexpected thing to come across on the road. They didn't seem to have left anything. So I mean, I was a bit disappointed. From here, I started going up into the mountains. Obviously, feeling like quite the champ. We all probably can relate to getting quite warm as you go up the hill. And I was going up this hill, having the day before tried to go up a different hill, and realizing or being told by this chap Danilo, who ended up hosting me that night because I was having all sorts of tech issues again. That the road I had been on was going to lead me straight into like loads of snow and I couldn't pass. And so he sent me back down the way I had come. And I don't know if I misread what he had said or if he wasn't sure what the road conditions were, but basically, this is where I ended up on that road. And, you know, I checked my map and thought, well, yeah, I mean, I could go down and go round the detour, or I could just push my way through all this snow. And so for about 2 solid hours, I just huffed and I puffed and I pushed my bike up that hill through the snow, not pedaling like at all. And eventually, just as the sun was kind of setting, I got to the very top with a feeling of elation and forgetting that I had really built up in my head that there was definitely going to be wolves around and someone was going to find me and be like, what a silly boy. Just there in the background, there is what should have been a water fountain. By this time I was quite thirsty. It was, of course, frozen solid. One of the amazing things about Bosnia, though, there are just clean water fountains pretty much every few kilometers along the road. So great for a cyclist. I made it through the snow and I made it to Sarajevo, which just like a few weeks or a few days before I got there had been right on the limit of securing the record for the worst air quality stretch in the world, beating Beijing's record almost. It, like many of the Balkan capitals, suffers from air pollution in a crazy way. But did I put any pictures in about the rest of Sarajevo? No, so I'll just hang on this picture and talk about it. But it also has some beautiful things, like the town center is amazing and pedestrianized. There was a very lively spectator sport of watching giant chess. All the old boys were stood around as a young man and an older man duked it out. There was this, I think it's called Wilson Avenue, which I'd cycled down a couple of times before realizing that at the weekends and in the evenings, it's completely car free, and just so many people, once I realized that I spoke to, they told me of how it was such a special place in terms of like that's where they would go when they were teenagers, and they would have illicit meetups, and it felt like it had a real special significant kind of part in the culture of the city. From Sarajevo, I went into Serbia, and this is a kind of tale of two people. So the guy creating the basket, I talked earlier a little bit about how much it's stories that we are kind of shape how we interact with the world and what we believe about things almost more than facts and more than anything. And so it's important what stories we see and what stories we kind of interact with. This guy was an interesting example in that he lived near the border between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia, and he eventually, like, I'd been trying to find an area to camp there. Again, there was not much space in between houses, and so finding a field or whatnot was proving a challenge. And I knocked on this guy's door, and he answered kind of a bit like, skeptical, I don't know what this guy's up to. And he spoke a little bit of German, and I speak a little bit of German. And eventually he kind of got the pieces of my story and was like, oh, wow, Mongolia, this is so exciting. And he got me inside and we chatted as we could. And he made his basket, he fed me some eggs, and it was like, okay, I can stay here for the night. This is great. How exciting that you're a person cycling to Mongolia. And then as the night kind of wore on and it was coming closer to bedtime, he had obviously been speaking to his wife who was somewhere and his kids. And they clearly had challenged, I guess, his idea that this random person who had arrived at his house in the middle of, or in the dark of night, was actually someone who was traveling to Mongolia, and his enthusiasm kind of waned and waned, and then he was still kind of on board, but he was like, right, can I see your pass? And I was like, what, my what? Which I eventually realized was my passport. And I showed it to him. I thought kind of a strange request. And he saw stamps that I had in my passport from when I had traveled through Serbia to Greece on the train. And he put this piece of evidence together with my scruffy appearance, which, to be fair, was extremely scruffy, and the fact that I didn't speak I don't know, maybe the fact that I didn't speak the language that he spoke, and he was all of a sudden was like, nope, don't trust this guy. This guy is like, I guess he thought I was a refugee who was selling him this yarn about Mongolia, and he kicked me out of his house at 9 o'clock at night. I wouldn't hear anything about me trying to explain anything different. And I was just kind of a bit stunned and like, well, I mean, even if I was a refugee, I'd probably be even more deserving of your hospitality and kind of help. Fortunately, that is almost the only story that I have that involves anything going bad in terms of interactions with people. And this guy on the left, that same night, I was kind of a bit bewildered, kind of cycling on, thinking, where am I going to sleep? And saw him pulling into his house and asked him if I could sleep in his garage or something. And he also spoke German, and I tried to speak to him by in German, and he was like, got me on the phone with his niece who spoke English, and I explained it to her. And then he was like, okay, come in the house. And I ended up on his sofa. He took a picture of me to send to his wife, and he was like, in case you kill me. And then he laughed. And then we had dinner together, and I slept in his house, and it was like, wow, it was a whirlwind evening, if you will. Yeah, this was, to me, was an interesting kind of example of how much stories shape how people interact with other people. From there, I went to the capital, Belgrade, and rode with like 200 people in this amazing critical mass that they had organized. This woman told me how she never cycles except for during these kind of protests. And then something happened with my camera and it turned into sepia, but I think it looks dead cool. So I don't know if you've ever cycled with like a whole group of people, but it was exciting. And, you know, we really took over the road and showed that more needs to be done to make that place safer for cyclists. And oh my goodness, look at the time. I have been waffling on. So then there was 4 months of lockdown in Kosovo, as one does, with these two brothers, Artie with his favorite cat Kurkuma, and Ishmael, who in this photo is looking, as he said himself, extremely Balkans. He would normally have long flowing black hair. We also had some pals. These kittens got born during lockdown. And Rosie, fortunately, was in the same country when lockdown happened, so we spent the time together. From Kosovo, I went to Albania, and this is one of the deputy mayors of Tirana, the capital, which was, which is, I visited because it is becoming this amazing, is undergoing an amazing transformation. This is the central square, which used to be full of cars and dust and kind of chaos, and is now just a beautiful pedestrian space with these amazing fountains and seats everywhere. And the whole city is kind of playful and these fun little signs, and really has been thought about from young, kind of the young person's view, from the very young to make it accessible for everyone. And this is one of the parks that's been kind of rehabilitated and is now such an amazing, vibrant place for people to visit at all times of the day. the kids are brought out onto the streets from the age of 3, really to be shown that the street is a place for them, and for drivers to see that they need to respect kids. This is the Vjosa River, amazing place that this these were some of the villagers who lived near there who are campaigning to make a solar powered village, and as an alternative to this plan that had been to create a dam on the Vjosa. And I've since heard that the Vjosa is going to be turned into a national park, and therefore it should be protected, which is really amazing news and amazing for these people. It will protect their livelihood and protect their, the place that they and their people that they and their forefathers have lived for generations. This is the beautiful mountains of Albania, which were some extremely tough cycling, but very spectacular. I would urge anyone to go and visit, but maybe pack light and be prepared for some heat. There are some, now there might be a surprise slide coming up any moment. This is also around that same area, which there was kind of, it was prime bear country. This is a bear print, but fortunately the only bear that we saw was that one. And from there I went into Macedonia, where people are, this group is campaigning to save or protect both the natural and the cultural heritage of Ohrid, a big lake there that is a spectacular place. This is one of the guys, and the other guy's photo didn't seem to get in here. From there I went to the capital, Skopje, and met this young chap, Gorian, who has created a app that shows people what the air quality is around them. Again, Skopje has some of the worst air quality in the world, and his app has helped to get people to realize that right there where they are, the air can be really toxic, and using that information, they are challenging the government and they are working to change that. This is jump forward into Bulgaria, where this is part of the group that have been working to protect the area around Trun, this beautiful area. They made a local campaign to stop a gold mine, which they have been able to do by coming together and instead proposing kind of ecotourism and just protecting the area for the for the future. And I think we are pretty much at the end. I was going to say something really meaningful about taking action on the climate crisis in the way that makes you feel most alive, and that doesn't just mean it makes you feel happy or that makes you feel good, but that makes you feel alive in terms of maybe it's what makes you angry, or maybe it's what makes you sad, but it's what makes it's what makes you feel. I've talked way too much. Here's a few words to think on, and now if anyone doesn't actually have things to do on a Friday night, then I don't, so please do ask me questions, and my apologies, I should have had a clock.
No, you're doing all right. I was your clock, Mike, so don't worry, you were doing just fine. Thank you so much. Gosh, what an entertaining story and a ride. And are we allowed a sneak preview of Rosie? I mean, Rosie, can she make us a little appearance? Come on, Rosie, we want to see you.
Hello.
How are you doing? Do you know when you guys are going to, well, no, obviously you don't know when you're going to be setting off again. I suppose it all kind of depends on the carnage, but are you kind of thinking that as soon as you're allowed out of the gate, you'll be off again?
Well, interesting question, because decisions have very recently been made which have not been announced yet. Are we allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we are going to delay until this time next year because, originally the plan had been to go this spring because I thought, it's all going to be fine by now. But it's obviously not. And we think international travel is probably, especially overland travel, is going to be the last thing to change. So, we're going to delay until next year.
Sounds like a good plan to kind of wait until things are a bit more sure and perhaps a bit easier for moving around, but also for your loved ones back home, knowing that actually things are a bit safer for you. So sounds like a good idea. Mike, I don't know if you want to kind of shrink your thank you, Rosie. Thank you for a special guest appearance, just so we can see you a bit more. And I'll turn off my video, so hopefully we just get a big one. So if you want to go up to the top right hand corner and just click on speaker view, hopefully that should give you a big mic. Now I thought the banana and the price tag thing was really lovely, just such a nice illustration of just why do humans overcomplicate everything? Just keep it simple. There's so much of the time where we just need to stop overcomplicating things. A bit like when the US spent, was it 13 billion or something, developing a pen to write in space upside down, and Russians used a pencil. Keep it simple. And your basket weaver who threw you out in the middle of the night. How cruel. I wonder whether he would have done the same thing if you'd been female.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was interesting because Rosie had started her run several months before, and at some point in the run had started asking people if she could camp in their gardens and the like, and had received such amazing amount of hospitality in terms of people taking her into their house and feeding her. And I had heard about this and was like, yeah, I mean, obviously, she's a woman, but they wouldn't do that for a weird guy. However, I was happily proved wrong, and have, I mean, in the main part, I've received lots of hospitality and very warm welcomes.
Yeah, I think people do feel quite protective of females. I think probably, kind of maybe especially big guys who've got, daughters of their own would want to see that someone else is looking after their daughter. Right, we've got a few questions. Andrew Sykes, little smarty pants. Yes, overland travel might be the way forward. Absolutely. I think that's going to be kind of a big feature in my talk tomorrow about sustainability as well. Like, the bicycle is the ultimate overland travel. So I think it's a smart idea to think about that. Will you be setting off from here, or will you be flying when you can, or what will be your mode?
So far have not taken a flight since 2015 and don't plan to anytime soon. So when we I didn't even really wrap it up very well. So we had got to Bulgaria when another lockdown was seeming imminent, and the next country along the route was going to be Georgia and Azerbaijan, and those countries still had closed borders from the first time, or from the first lockdown. So that's why we had now returned to the UK, and we did that by, 2 trains, and then Rosie got food poisoning and we had 2 days in Sofia, and then we took a bus for 30 hours, and then we took 2 more trains, and then we had to wait in Amsterdam for a bit, and then we took a boat, and then we took a train. So very much on the not flying kind of team.
Excellent. But I expect you had some amazing adventures along the way that you never would have had you just hopped on a flight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I get it a bit, and Rosie gets it, I think, even more intensely, is that thing of seeing every part of a country when you travel in this way. You don't just get to go from one nice bit to the next nice bit. You have to go through all the sort of stuff in the middle. And doing that in, like, the majority of my trip was in the Balkans, and that was very interesting in terms of how much amazing, like, just space for nature there is, or the rest of nature, if we want to speak more accurately, there is there. Like, I don't know, growing up in the UK, I was like, oh, a forest, yes, they're like perfectly straight lines, all one type of tree, which apparently isn't what a forest is. And so spending that much time in, yeah, especially Bosnia and Herzegovina and Bulgaria, there was just the kind of like days of forest, of all, you know, real mixed old forest. Was amazing experience.
Amazing. Okay, we've got a few questions that I will crack on with. Mark has been asking lots of questions. He's been the attendee of the day, I'd say. So, did you have any instances of illness, respiratory or gastric, or injury?
Did I have any?
The respiratory thing's interesting with the cities as bad as you were saying. That's really shocking.
Yeah, no, I guess I was only in the cities for a brief time, but especially in Sarajevo, there was a couple of people I was supposed to meet who were, you know, ironically doing projects to try and help with the air pollution and things like that, who themselves had kind of pneumonia or like different respiratory illnesses, so couldn't meet me. I don't think I had anything go wrong myself, though.
Good. Excellent.
Yes, I've been relatively
And
lucky.
did you have any encounters with officialdom while you were traveling? Like, did you get stopped and hassled by the police, things like that?
Well, I mean, there was the army whose tent I got kicked out of. There was there was the road police. It was arriving on that island whose name I just cannot bring to mind. The police stopped me and were like, "What the hell are you doing here?" It was like, you know, it was January. Not so many traveling people around at that time. So they gave me a bit of hassle. And the one border crossing that I got kind of anything more than like a smile and a wave through was coming into Serbia, where they made me unpack all my things and were quite like, "What are you doing here?" But aside from that, it was all quite good. We, during our lockdown in Kosovo, the mayor himself kind of found out about us being locked down and was like, "Who are these people? I want to meet them." So that was obviously a very positive experience with some sort of officialdom.
Your 15 minutes of fame. Amazing.
Yeah.
And this was, Daniel's got a question here, which I was quite intrigued about as well, because your bike looks very heavily laden for a bike packing setup at some points in some of those pictures. And Daniel wants to know if have you toured with panniers, or you always have been a bike packer?
So I started bike touring kind of by accident when I had gone to Italy once, and I had a rucksack and things with me, and I was like, and I, this is going to make me sound really ignorant. I was like, "Oh, look, Slovenia. That's where Slovenia is. I could cycle around there." I was in that place with no firm plans. And so I had bought a secondhand bike, which is called Silvia. It's a beautiful kind of Italian coffee, what do you call it, like a coffee tour bike, and just got my rucksack and sort of strapped it to the pannier rack. So that's been a kind of quite a firm favorite way of touring up until now.
Okay.
So this was the first time trying a bike packing setup. The bags, I basically managed to scadge off Mark Beaumont by sending him a message like, "Hey, have you got any things that that you might not need anymore?" So yeah, definitely, you know, bike packing in sort of bag form, but maybe not so much in the ethos of like minimalism, etc. I like to think of it as plan light and pack heavy to make up for the consequences.
Excellent. It's I quite miss that about the cycle touring festival in person, because there's usually like a little area where people just go and shove stuff that they don't want anymore, and it's such a nice community where, you know, you can just give something away that you know has been really useful for you, and it will be for somebody else as well. So roll on times when we can get back in person and do that again. So Bryony wants to know, how did you get back to the UK? Also love the "don't let better get in the way of good" end. So important.
Yeah, I got back to the UK with the trains and buses and the like. We were very fortunate to have, through the filmmaker Guy Loftus of Studio Future, who came out and made a film of us, which I didn't even get a chance to speak about. He had got sponsored by Interrail to take the train basically there and back. So he did that whole film also without any flying, and he had some extra passes which we were able to use for the return journey.
Great.
Just on the don't be don't let better get in the way of good. I think that there's this kind of thing of don't let what's the more traditional version of don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that there's a thing where like people are like, oh, anything that's like a little bit better is like is worth doing, which in some ways it is, but with the sort of urgency and the scale of the crisis that we face, we need to think of beyond just things being a bit better, like, you know,
we need to take some drastic action. Hey?
Yeah, we need to make things actually to be good rather than just better, because otherwise you're working on a spectrum that you don't know where it ends.
Good advice. Right, we've got some more advice being sought here about how do you have any advice for traveling by train, bus, etc. from your experiences? Anything to do with planning or costs?
Very mixed bag in terms of trains. With bikes, I presume is where the question is framed. Once you get onto the continent, generally relatively affordable, but sometimes you need to put your bike in a box, which I found out with about 45 minutes to spare when I was doing a trip from France to Italy, which was a interesting and rather tense rush to find a bike box somewhere in Paris. So
you did it.
Yes, we did it and got it on, and it was very much an exciting thing. Sometimes inexplicably in Germany, I've had times where the very good high-speed trains don't have any bike spaces at all, and so I've been forced to take a bus which had like a Flix bus which could attach bikes to, which was okay. And yeah, I mean, in terms of cost, I think that there's obviously a perception that trains will always be more expensive, but maybe not that much more expensive if you're actually booking them in advance as you would with a flight. I traveled back from China to Vienna to start the ride for about £380 all in for trains and a bus and a boat.
Nice.
For 12 days of traveling, which was quite good.
Wow. And did Rosie, did she run with just a backpack, or was she pulling a trailer? Because I've seen, and this is a question from Daniel, and I've seen both on the videos.
Yeah, she had a push buggy at certain times when there wasn't very much mountain terrain, but for the rest of the time she was just with her rucksack, which had everything in it, like tents and whatnot. And yeah, so depending on the terrain. And
was she running every day?
Yeah, pretty much, except for the rest days or the days where she had people to meet.
Right.
I mean, we could get her in to answer these questions.
We've got, well, it's actually someone from New Zealand asking this question, who's there tomorrow morning, time traveling in tomorrow morning, and enjoying this as well, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, hello to the future. And it's good to see that Rosie is in the future. It's good. Daniel was wondering if your route to Mongolia will follow a similar route. Will you go back over some of the same bits, or will you kind of train and bus to get to where you left off?
So I left Billy, quivering little thing that it is, in a friendly man's.
Oh, your bike?
Yeah.
Of course.
In a garage in Bulgaria at the Black Sea coast. So yeah, don't really have any option but to go back and get it. So yeah, won't restart from here. We'll restart from the place that got to, but yeah, definitely plan to go back there by trains and the like. That's why it will be a while until we can really do that again, because getting across different countries and everything is a bit complicated.
What will you be taking with you? Because it's quite interesting having a journey like that where you kind of stop halfway through and then you're kind of going back. So are there going to be any things that you take that you on the first half of the journey that you kind of really wish that you'd had, and now you'll think, oh great, I can take them?
Probably be more that I can leave some things. I was slowly and reluctantly losing pieces of weight along the way. I definitely had a few too many things for the majority of the cycling. So yeah, I mean, I've got everything with me now, and I will look at what I can perhaps leave behind. Still not quite sure what that will be, but I'm sure there is some stuff.
Right. Good stuff. And Mark wants to know, did you have any equipment failures that you couldn't fix yourself or by local shops?
So before I set off from Vienna, I installed a dynamo hub, and that was powering, well, in theory, that was powering my lights, and also could have been powering kind of the USB charger. And the way it was set up originally, it kind of would do the lights, but wouldn't really do anything with charging a battery. And then this intelligent man that we stayed with in Villach, he was actually an electrician, so he figured it out. So he had to switch things around and could then work for the lights or switch things around and charge a USB. So that worked for a while, or it's worked for a little bit. And then basically when I was in Italy, which was the next day, for some reason the lights weren't working, and I was trying to cycle at night. Fortunately, I had a sort of backup option. But basically that has been a bit on and off in terms of working, and hasn't really been working for a while, and that will be one of the things I need to try and sort out when I get back to Bulgaria.
Interesting. One thing that I found from years of living in places with very bad electricity surges, and the same obviously when you've got your dynamo hub as well, because I've got one on my bike, is charge a battery pack, don't charge your beloved objects directly. So if anyone doesn't know that yet, make sure that you go through a power bank so that you're not kind of blowing stuff up. If you're the worst case scenario, you're blowing up a hard drive, a battery pack rather than your camera or something, because that is just a heartbreaking moment, isn't it? Gosh. And then I have given out your contact details, and I think it's Max in New Zealand said in Georgia and Armenia, he can introduce you to bicycle groups. So I've just put your contact details in there. So if you want to send Mike an email, I'm sure he would absolutely love that, especially to have someone who's not going to chuck him out last thing at night and someone who might be able to help him out. But let's see, we've got another couple of questions coming in. How long was supergluing the chain effective for?
So I think I did it, and then it immediately fell off, and then I did it with a bit more kind of concerted effort, and held it and waited for a while. And I think then it was effective for about 5 kilometers, and then it kind of came off again, and then redid it, and it was maybe did another 5, and then there was another section where I did probably 2 or 3, and then it was just coming off all the time. So maybe about, roughly 12.
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, better than nothing. Have you got one of those little chain crackers?
I do now.
Good. They're a good tool to have. Max is just asking if the film has been made of your trip. And also, this is a very good point to do your little plug, please, Mike.
Yes. So I would urge you to go and check out the film that is really about Rosie's trip, because she was the inspiration for the New Story Ride as well. It's called The New Story Run. You can find links to it on my website, thenewstoryride.wordpress.com, or Rosie's website, thenewstoryrun.wordpress.com, or by just probably Googling New Story Run film. Might come up. It's on Vimeo.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to find out more about the people who I didn't speak about, or the people who I did speak about, go and have a look on my website. And Rosie's also got tons of amazing, inspiring people to show you that there is a point in you finding what inspires you and going and doing something about it, on her website. And I have things on my website. And we both do all the slavery to Mark Zuckerberg as well, and Twitter and the like. If you search for the hashtags New Story Run or New Story Ride, you'll be bound to find us.
Excellent. I've just put up a Vimeo link for the video. So that is in the chat right now if you want to copy and paste that. And I've put all the social stuff in there as well. So please do have a look at all Mike's social stuff, and then hopefully we'll see a bit more joint stuff going on with Rosie in the future. And we wish you all the best. And Mike, are you tempted to put on a pair of trainers and join Rosie for a run?
We do go out running a little bit, but I mean, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, good run, 5K. And she's like, yeah, I mean, that's not really a run, is it?
That was the warm up.
So different kind of levels. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting, and thank you very much, Laura and Tim. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to other things that are coming up.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much, Mike. So at 8 o'clock, we've got the fastest women. So Rosie is a pretty speedy woman on foot. We've got some fastest women on bikes at 8 o'clock this evening. So please join for that. And we've got another couple of days worth. I'll be talking tomorrow about sustainability. So if anyone has had their appetite whetted for sustainability, then do come along tomorrow at midday. Otherwise, thank you ever so much, everybody. And thanks to Mike. Massive round of applause.
Thank you.
Round of applause.